Good evening, and welcome back to another episode of True Life Mysteries. Tonight, I'm sharing a story that is heartbreaking, miraculous, and unforgettable. It's the story of an abandoned baby, barely a month old, found alive in the most unlikely place, a story of survival against the odds, and a glimpse into a life filled with desperation, secrecy, and unfulfilled promises. Let's go back to the moment when it all began. It was a cold winter morning. The sun hadn't fully risen, and the city was just beginning to stir. In a deserted alleyway, there was silence, until a faint, almost ghostly sound broke through. A passerby, out for an early walk, froze. She heard it again, a soft, weak cry. It didn't sound like anything you'd expect in an alley, and certainly not from within a pile of discarded rubbish. Driven by curiosity and concern, she approached the sound. As she dug through trash bags and empty boxes, her heart racing, she found something that would haunt her forever. A tiny baby girl, wrapped in a thin, tattered blanket, her face pale and cold, but alive. She called the authorities immediately, and within minutes, the scene was swarming with paramedics and police. The baby, barely clinging to life, was rushed to the hospital. When we arrived, our first priority was, of course, the baby's safety. But the next question was clear. How had she ended up here? Who had left her in such a cruel, vulnerable position? We began to comb through the alley looking for anything that could lead us to her family or whoever was responsible. Amongst the garbage, we found a thin, patterned blanket wrapped around her tiny body. It was cheap, well-worn, and stained. A piece of fabric that seemed to carry more than just physical weight. Could this be a clue to the mother's identity? The blanket became our first lead, and we followed it with all the resources we had. We needed to know where it came from, so we took it to our lab, analyzing the fibers and stains, hoping it would reveal more than just fabric. Through the lab analysis, we found that the blanket was a common type, often sold at discount stores. It wasn't much, but it gave us a starting point. We tracked down local stores that sold similar items, asking store owners and customers if they had any recollection of the blanket or someone who might have recently purchased it. Our search eventually led us to a small, quiet neighborhood. Here, we found a shopkeeper who remembered a young woman buying that exact type of blanket a few weeks ago. She was alone, quiet, and seemed nervous. The shopkeeper didn't know her name, but he remembered her face, a face that would soon become central to our investigation. Through descriptions and cross-referencing with local records, we finally identified the woman, a 26-year-old named Sarah, who lived in a modest apartment a few blocks away. Sarah wasn't married, and from what we learned, she'd had a brief relationship with a man who left her as soon as he learned she was pregnant. Left to face the pregnancy alone, Sarah's life had taken a tragic turn. Sarah's neighbors described her as reclusive and quiet, rarely seen outside. She didn't have a support system, no family close by, and few friends. Life had isolated her, leaving her to bear the weight of her situation alone. Her relationship had been short-lived, a romance filled with promises, but ultimately left her with only a broken heart and a growing responsibility. With this information, we located Sarah and brought her in for questioning. Sitting across from us, she was visibly exhausted, her face pale and drawn. When we told her about the baby, her eyes filled with tears, and she broke down. Sarah confessed that she had indeed given birth to the baby girl. In between sobs, she explained her situation. Her boyfriend had abandoned her after learning of the pregnancy, leaving her with no financial support, no stability, and no idea how to care for a child on her own. The shame of being alone, unmarried, and soon to be a mother had weighed heavily on her. She tried to make ends meet, working long hours, but it wasn't enough. She could barely afford food, let alone baby supplies. Eventually, the despair became overwhelming. One night, in a moment of what she described as absolute desperation, she left her baby in the alley, hoping someone with a better life, a better home, would find her and give her what she couldn't provide. It was a tragic choice born out of heartbreak and hopelessness, one that would haunt her forever. As much as we sympathize with her pain, abandoning a child was a crime. We contacted Child Welfare Services, and Sarah faced charges for child abandonment. The legal system would determine her fate, but the baby's future was our immediate concern. We wanted to ensure that this innocent child, who had already endured so much, would have a better life from here on out. After weeks in the hospital, the baby girl, now named Hope, was placed in foster care with a family experienced in nurturing infants who had faced trauma. Hope had survived a dark beginning, but she was given a chance for a bright future, one filled with love, safety, and stability. Sarah, too, faced a long road ahead, dealing with the emotional and legal consequences of her actions. But perhaps knowing her child was safe and cared for would be a small comfort in the difficult days to come. This case serves as a sobering reminder of the challenges and heartbreaks some people face behind closed doors. The pressures of isolation, financial hardship, and emotional pain can push people to do unimaginable things. But it's also a story of resilience, of a baby who survived against the odds, and a chance for redemption. As investigators, we see the worst in humanity, but we also witness acts of compassion and resilience that remind us of the strength of the human spirit. Little Hope may never know the depth of her journey or the people who fought to protect her, but she will carry forward with a new life. If you found this story moving, if you want to dive into more real-life mysteries and stories of survival, hit the link below and subscribe for more. Every week, we bring you tales of tragedy, hope, and justice, stories that need to be told. Thanks for watching, and until next time, stay safe and stay compassionate.